Okay, we are back to continue and ideally finish the first chapter of Lady Ton's Circle of Women. I lift the brush but keep my face down, staring at the mess I've made and waiting for my mother to say something. The silence continues, and I glance up. She gazes out the window, oblivious to me, my mistake, or Yi Feng's wiggling. When she's like this, we know she's thinking about my two older brothers who died on the same day 5 years ago from heavenly flowers disease, smallpox. If they'd survived, they would have been 10 and 12 years old. And if they'd lived, my father might not have brought in Miss Zhao. I wouldn't have Yi Feng as my younger brother, and my mother wouldn't have a ritual son. My maid, Poppy, enters, and respectful lady gives a small nod. Without inspecting my work, she says, "That's enough for today. Poppy, please have the children change and bring them to the library to see their father." Poppy takes my brother to Miss Zhao, and then the two of us continue to my room. Father bought Poppy for me on the occasion of my birth. She's 15 with big feet. Her eyes are set wide on her face, and she has an obedient disposition. She sleeps on the floor at the foot of my bed, and many times has comforted me when I've awakened by a nightmare. She helps me to dress, wash, and eat. I don't know where Poppy comes from, but she'll be part of my dowry, which means we'll be together until whichever one of us dies first. That's sad, sweet. Having sat nearly all day, I'm antsy, but Poppy will have none of it. "Young Shin, you are worse than your brother," she scolds. "Stand still so I can brush your hair." "But," she holds up a finger. "No," she gives me a stern look, but it quickly turns into a grin. She spoils me, it's true. "So tell me what you learned today." I do my best, reciting the usual things. When I marry, I will respectfully serve my father-in-law. I will not look at him when he speaks to me. I will not address him, ever. I will listen and obey. Poppy noisily sucks her teeth to let me know she approves, but my mind is chewing on something a respectful lady said earlier today. Always remember your place in the world. I was born into the Tan family. My given name is Yangjin, which means loyal virtue. Medicine has been in my family for generations, but my father chose a different path. He's an imperial scholar of the Juren level, a recommended man who has passed provincial exams. He works as a prefect here in Leizhou, which is close to the ocean but hundreds of li from our family's ancestral home in Wuxi. I am butchering these names, absolutely butchering them, but we shall continue. For longer than my lifetime, he's been studying to take the next and highest level of the imperial examinations, which take place every 3 years. The geomancer has already chosen a date for father to travel to the capital, where he'll complete his final studies before testing begins. If he succeeds, the emperor himself will read my father's essay, announce that he's achieved the level of Jinshi scholar, a presented scholar, and award him his title. I don't know how our lives will change if that happens. except that our family will have taken another step up the ladder of life. What else can I say about my place in the world? I am 8 years old, young enough that I still wear my black hair in ribboned tufts. Respectful lady has told me that my complexion is as fine as the flesh of a white peach, but that can't be true since she has Poppy apply ointments to the 3 pockmarks, one high on my forehead and 2 side by side on my right cheek, that are visible reminders that I survived smallpox while my brothers didn't. My feet make up for those defects. They are perfect. Today I wear a pair of silk slippers embroidered by my mother with flowers and bats for good luck. Poppy nudges me. And your relations with your future mother-in-law? Yes, yes, I say, snapping back to my maid. When she sits, I will remain standing. I will rise early, but I won't make any noise that could disturb her sleep. I will prepare and serve tea to her. Poppy pats my bottom, satisfied that I'm ready to be presented to my father. That's enough. Let's hurry now. We don't want to upset the master. We retrace our steps, picking up Yifeng from their room he shares with Miss Zhao. The 3 of us walk hand in hand. The rain has finally started, but we are protected by the colonnade. The drops hitting the tile roof sound comforting, and already the air feels cleaner, lighter, as the humidity is washed out of it. In the library, my parents sit next to each other in simply carved chairs. An altar table rests against the white wall behind them. A summer orchid blossoms from the bronze pan. Respectful lady's hands lie folded in her lap. Her feet are propped on a brocade footrest, and her slippers are small as my own, peek out from under her gown. Respectful lady is always pale, but today her skin appears almost translucent. A light sheen of sweat glistens on her forehead and upper lip. My father seems unaffected by the odor coming from mother's feet. He sits with his legs spread and his hands on his thighs, so his fingers point inward and his thumb rests outward. He wears the long layered robes of his rank. The sleeve guards that edge the hems of his tunic are heavily embroidered. A mandarin square, also embroidered, covers his chest and tells all who see him his grade within the imperial system of civil servants. God, that's a mouthful. He motions for Yifeng to come to him. Poppy drops his hand, and Yifeng darts across the floor and jumps into our father's lap. I would never do that. I lost the ability to run when my feet were bound. But even if I could run, it would be inappropriate for me to act so recklessly. My father laughs. My mother smiles. Poppy squeezes my hand reassuringly. After 5 minutes, the visit ends. My father has not said a word to me. I'm not hurt. We have both behaved in a proper way. I can be proud of that. Poppy retakes Yifeng's hand. We're about to leave when my mother suddenly rises. She sways like a stalk of young bamboo in a spring wind. My father glances at her questioningly. Before he can say a word, she collapses to the floor. Apart from her hands, which lie splayed and limp, and her face, which was as white as a full moon, she looks like a pile of discarded clothing. Poppy screams. My father leaps from the chair, lifts my mother into his arms, and carries her outside. As he trots down the colonnade, he shouts for other servants to come. They arrive from every corner, including a man and a boy of about 12. They are only the 5th and 6th males I've ever seen. They must live here, but I've been isolated in the inner chambers where I have been protected from the eyes of boys and men apart from my father Yifeng and the two brothers I barely remember. Take my horse and fetch the doctor, father orders. Bring hot water. No, bring cold water. Compresses, and find Miss Zhao. The old man and boy break away, as do the cook and the kitchen scullery maid. When father reaches my mother's room, the remaining servants and I follow him inside. Respectful lady's marriage bed is big and spacious, like a little house with 3 small rooms to give utmost privacy. A moon-shaped archway leads to the sleeping platform. Father lays respectful lady on the quilt, sets her arms by her side, and straightens her gown so the silk drapes over her feet. Then he smooths the tendrils of hair that have come loose from her bun and tucks them behind her ears. Wake up, wife, he pleads. I've never heard him speak so tenderly, not even to Yifeng. He glances back at the rest of us crowded into the marriage bed's first antechamber. Where is Miss Zhao? Get her. A couple of servants run out while others enter with hot and cold buckets of water. At last Miss Zhao arrives. She touches father's shoulder. It's best if you leave. She turns to the servants. All of you too, except for Yunjin. My father regards me. I see his expression something new, but I am unsure what it is. Maybe I should take the girl, he says to his concubine. Leave her here. She needs to learn. Miss Zhao puts a hand on the small of his back. Let us know when the doctor arrives. Once everyone has left, Miss Zhao looks at me squarely, which is yet another thing that has never happened before. I suspected this would happen, she says. We can hope that by fainting, respectful lady has given us time to help her. But what's wrong? I ask timidly. I've been told your mother took great care with your foot binding, choosing to do it with her own hands. Too often a mother can turn sentimental when her daughter cries, but not respectful lady. She did everything correctly, and not once did your feet become infected. Now you know how to take care of your feet. Poppy helps me. But you understand the maintenance that is required. Unbind the feet every 4 days, I begin to recite, knowing these rules are no less important than those for the stages of my life or how to behave towards my future mother-in-law. Wash them, trim the toenails, and sand down any places where a bone might break through the skin. Whether toenails or a shard of bone, if the skin breaks, you must take extra care to keep the wound clean. Otherwise, you will get an infection. If you ignore it, the bound foot, unable to get fresh air, will begin to fester. Some mothers take this risk when binding their daughter's feet. Some of the pride I feel in my feet falls away when she adds, the person who bound my feet all loud. I can't read. Jesus Christ. The person who bound my feet allowed this to happen and was able to break off my dead toes. This is why my feet are so very small, and it is something your father appreciates. Oh my God, what the hell? Now is not the time to crow, but I can't possibly say that to Miss Zhao. My point is, she goes on, infection can set in, and if a mother isn't vigilant, then her daughter will probably die. But little girls aren't the only ones who can perish. Adult women who don't properly care for their feet can also succumb. With that, Miss Sal pulled Respectful Lady's gown up to reveal the embroidered leggings that covered the unsightly bulge of the bent heel and crushed arch. This lump of useless and unappealing flesh is supposed to remain hidden, and seeing it reminds me of something Respectful Lady told me during my binding. Our feet don't shrink or disappear. The bones are simply moved and manipulated to create the illusion of golden lilies. This is so crazy. Oh my god. Miss Sal unties one of the leggings and pulls it free to expose fiery rivers of red that streaked up my mother's leg. What startles me even more is the look of her calf. It is as thin as a rope, far more slender and formless than mine. I reach out to touch what looks so clearly wrong, but Miss Sal grabs my wrist and pulls me back. She picks up one of my mother's feet. It looks tiny in her hand. Our legs become emaciated because our feet cannot carry what lies beneath the skin. Miss Sal states, "This is nothing to worry about. The problem is your mother has an infection." Jesus. Okay. I struggle to make sense of this. Respectful Lady is respectful in all ways, including the care of her body. She would never ignore her feet. "I'm going to unwrap her foot," Miss Sal explains. "Are you ready?" I am not ready. Gosh. You can tell I'm a wimp because I'm trying to see how much is left in the chapter. Oh, gosh. "Are you ready?" When I nod, Miss Sal slips off the shoe and hands it to me. The smell worsens. The concubine swallows and then proceeds to unwind the 3-meter length of gauze binding cloth. With each layer removed, the smell of decay gets stronger. When Miss Sal gets closer to the skin, the cloth comes away, stained yellow and green. Finally, the foot is naked. A jagged sliver of bone protrudes from the left side of the midfoot. Freed from the bindings, and I can't imagine the pain my mother must have been experiencing, the foot swells before our eyes. Get the bucket. I did as I was told. Miss Sal gently moves my mother's leg so it dangles off the side of the bed and places her foot in the water. My mother stirs but doesn't waken. Go to Respectful Lady's dressing table and bring me her ointments and powders. I do as I'm told. My father's concubine shakes some of the same astringent Poppy uses on my feet into the water. It's made from ground mulberry root, tannin, and frankincense. By the time the doctor arrives, Miss Sal and I have patted dry my mother's foot, sprinkled alum between the toes and over the injury, and set it on a pillow. Excuse me. My mother has stirred each time we've moved her, but she has yet to open her eyes. You stay here, Miss Sal says. I'll talk to your father to see how he wants to proceed. A male doctor may not see or touch a female patient. A go-between is needed. Often the husband is chosen, but I will volunteer. As soon as she's gone, my mother's eyes flutter open. I do not want that woman in my room, she says weakly. Go out there. Tell your father that she cannot be the go-between. I step into the corridor. It's still raining, and I gulp in the fresh air. Even so, the smell of my mother's rotting flesh clings to the back of my throat. My father and Miss Sal speak to the man who must be the doctor. I have now seen my 7th male. He wears a long robe in dark blue fabric. His gray hair laps at the curve of his stooped shoulders. I'm afraid to approach, but I must. I walk up to my father, pull on his sleeve and say, "Respectful lady is awake, and she says that I be the go-between." Jesus. Oh, this poor baby. The man I take to be the doctor says, "Prefect Tan would be proper for you to do this duty. It would be proper for you to do this duty." But when my father's eyes brim with tears, the doctor turns to Miss Zhao. "I suspect you have some experience with the ailments that afflict women." "I am only a girl, but I must honor my mother's wishes. Respectful lady wants—" My father slaps the back of his hand against his other palm to stop me from saying another word. Silently, he weighs the possibilities. Then he speaks. "Dr. Ho, you will use my daughter." Father looks down at me. "You repeat exactly what the doctor says to your mother and what your mother says back to the doctor. Do you understand?" I nod solemnly. His decision reflects his love for my mother. I'm sure of it. The adults exchange a few more words, and then my father is led away by Miss Zhao. The doctor asks me a series of questions, which I take to the respectful lady. She answers, "No, I have not eaten spicy foods. You can tell him my sleep is fine. I am not suffering from excessive emotions." God. I go back and forth between Dr. Ho in the colonnade and my mother in her bed. The questions and the responses seem to have little to do with my mother's infection. That she doesn't volunteer these details puzzles me. After the doctor is satisfied, he writes a prescription. The scullery maid is sent to a pharmacy to pick up the herbs for the formula. The cook brews the decoction. Yeah, okay. The cook brews the decoction, and a few hours later, when it's ready, it's brought to my mother's room. I lift the cup to her lips, and she takes a few sips before falling back on her pillow. "It's late," she says in a soft voice. "You should go to bed." "Let me stay here. I can hold the cup for you." She turns her head to face the wooden panels on the back wall of the marriage bed. Her fingers press against one of them, idly wiggling it in its frame. "I will have finished the drink by the time you've washed your face." God, this is making my eyes tired. I go to my room, change into my bedclothes and sleeping slippers, lie down and nestle between the goose down-filled mattress and a cotton quilt. I'm drained by all I've seen and find myself drifting off to sleep. I don't know how much time has passed before I'm awakened abruptly by the sound of people running. In the gloom, I see Poppy sit up and yawn. She lights the oil lamp. The sputtering flame casts dancing shadows on the walls. We quickly dress and go out to the corridor. The rain has stopped, but it's dark. The birds singing in the trees tell me dawn is coming. Just as we reach Respectful Lady's room, Cook rushes out and turns so swiftly that she nearly crashed into us. I totter on my bound feet, thrown off balance. I place a hand on the wall to steady myself. When she sees me, she wipes tears from her cheek with the backs of her hands. "So sorry, so sorry." The household is thrown into more commotion as Miss Zhao crosses the courtyard with Dr. Ho behind her. Without pausing, they enter a Respectful Lady's room. I start forward. Cook says, "Don't go in there." But I slip past her and through the door. The smell is something I will never forget. Oh, God. A curtain has been hung over the front of the third chamber and my mother's marriage bed. My father sits on the stool before it. My mother's bare arm rests in his lap, the palm facing towards the ceiling. Dr. Ho tells my father to wrap Respectful Lady's wrist in a linen handkerchief. Once my father finishes the task, the doctor steps forward and places 3 fingers on the cloth. He closes his eyes to concentrate, but how can he feel anything through the handkerchief? I look away and glimpse the cup I held up to my mother's last night. To my mother last night. My heart thumps in my chest as I realize she never took another sip. Over the next 2 days, the entire household is busy. Servants come and go. More herbs are brewed for invigorating teas. I'm once again sent to ask Dr. Ho's questions and return to him with Respectful Lady's answers. Nothing helps. Respectful Lady continues to weaken. When I touch her hand or cheek, I feel burning heat. Her foot, still balanced atop the pillow, has grown to the size of a melon. Rather, a cracked melon that oozes foul-smelling fluids. A prized characteristic of a perfectly bound foot is the cleft formed when the toes come back to meet the heel of the foot. Ideally, it should be so deep that a large silver coin can slide into the crevice. Now bloody goo drips from the slit, while the red streaks have continued to climb up her leg. As the hours pass, Respectful Lady becomes less interested in the words that shower down on her, turning her face to the back wall of her enclosed bed. I'm allowed to stand next to her to comfort her and to let her know she is not alone. She mumbles names. Mama, Baba. When she cries out for my brothers who died, my index finger seeks out heavenly flowers scars on my face. On the fourth night, Father, Miss Sao, and Yi Feng enter. Tears stain Miss Sao's powdered cheeks. I can't read, God. Even when her face shows sorrow, she is still beautiful. My father chews on the insides of his cheeks, reining in his emotions. Yi Feng is too young to understand what is going on, and gallops towards the bed. My father scoops him up before he can disturb our mother. Respectful Lady raises an arm and touches my brother's foot. Remember me, son. Make offerings for me. After the threesome leaves, only Respectful Lady, our 2 maids, and I remain. The lamps are trimmed low. The gentle plink, plink of rain on the roof fills the room. My mother's breathing slows, a breath, then a long pause, a breath, then a long pause. Again, the names of those gone fall from her lips. I don't know if she's looking for them or if she's responding to their calls to her from their home in the afterworld. Suddenly, she turns to face me, her eyes open wide. For the first time in hours, she's fully here. Come closer. She reaches for me. I take her hand and lean in to hear. I lament that life is like a sunbeam passing through a crack in a wall, that I won't live to see you become a wife and mother. We won't have the sorrows of partings or the joys of reunions. I won't be able to help you when you have disappointments or rejoice with you in moments of good fortune. She once again closed her eyes and let her head fall away from me. She doesn't release my hand. Instead, even as she murmurs the names of the dead, she squeezes it and I squeeze back. To live is to suffer, she mutters. This is her last coherent sentence. She cries, Mama, Mama, Mama. She mumbles my brother's name. Yi Feng, come. She does not call for me. I'm exhausted, but I continue to stand vigil despite the ache I feel in my feet. As tired as I am, I want to share in her pain. Mother to daughter, life to death. In the deepest, darkest of the night, respectful lady takes her last breath, having reached 28 years of age. I'm nearly overwhelmed by feelings of helplessness and guilt. I should have been more. A son of respectful lady's own blood who would be worth living for. I should have been able to do more to help her. Okay. That is the end of that chapter, and I will read no more right now. My eyes are so bleary, and that was so heavy. Anyway, hope it was enjoyable for whoever might find this.